Good morning, River City Church. I'm just excited to be here this morning. I'm excited to share with you guys. As you know, we are continuing in our series of love. Jared kind of laid this out a couple weeks ago. And I do have to say what Jared said, that I've had this kind of bad cough this morning. And I do know that a lot of you have been praying for me, so thank you for that. I'm going to try my best to hold it in. Rudy's got me on like auto mute in case I start hacking a lung at you. But I think we're going to be okay. Okay, so we're in this series of love, and as we start this morning, I want to share a story with you guys. I think that every family sort of has this oral history that comes with it, a little bit of lore, and I want to share a story of you from my family, and it's one that I've basically grown up hearing in a very condensed version, though I have to admit I did a little bit of a deep dive on it this morning. I'll not go into all of that, but it was interesting. But the story that I grew up hearing was of a lady named Lady Catherine Barnes, and she was born mid-1800s, like in England, very like Jane Austen style situation here. She was, part of that old English money aristocracy. She had the estate and the title and the servants and, the whole deal. And really at that time, the whole idea in that part of society was if you're a man, you run this kind of rich, vast estate, and if you are a woman, you marry a man who runs the vast estate. That's pretty much how it goes. And somewhere along the line, Lady Catherine meets a man named Samuel, Captain Samuel Barnes. And Lady Catherine, she falls in love with him. And so she basically has this choice that she has to make. She can hold on to everything that she is entitled to by birth. She can hold on to any inheritance, any allowance. She can hold on to her title, society, money, everything that she has ever known. But if she does that, she does not get the one thing her heart truly desires. She does not get to be with the one man that she truly loves. And so the other choice is she gives all that up and she chooses him. But she will be completely cut off, completely disowned, everything gone, wiped away. And I have to say that here, I am thankful for the choice that she made of sacrifice. She is Lady Catherine Barnes and then Captain Samuel Barnes. They're my great-great-great-grandparents, so 3 greats. And my great-grandmother was alive for the first 10 years of my childhood, and I have very specific memories of her, so this doesn't really feel that far off. But she chose Samuel. She left everything she had. They left England. They moved to the States, and they started a whole new life together. And I kind of want to start with this story as we're kind of moving into love, because we're really basing this whole series out of that really kind of quintessential passage in 1 Corinthians. And the thing is, it is this quintessential passage because it is so good, but because of that, it's kind of become a little bit saturated, right? It's so easy for us to read it or hear it or see it on a Hallmark card and just say, okay, love is all these things. We know that. Duh, let's keep going. But I really want to pause this morning, and I kind of want to look what is underneath all of that, right? What is the history and the nature of God and the words that Paul is saying in a way that is tangible for us now. I'm going to read kind of through some of the first part of that passage again. We're going to start in 1 Corinthians 1:7. And it says, "If I speak in tongues of men or angels but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking. It keeps no records of wrong, and love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. It always protects, it always trusts, always hopes, and it always perseveres." Now this morning, as we kind of look in this passage, there's one saying in here, one little spot that I really want us to dig in and focus, and it is where it says, love is not self-seeking. Now Jared laid out when he opened this a lot about where the church was when Paul wrote this letter in Corinth, but I just want to take just a minute to kind of build out so we understand where the actual city was, what the context of this was. And so Corinth is this really, ancient city, but in 150 BC, the Romans, when they came in, they kind of just destroyed it. They leveled the whole thing. And 50 years later, they come and they build it back up. And where this city is, it's in a very kind of, there's like a big sea here and a big sea here, and it's on this isthmus. So it's really this point of trade, a port of kind of like international people coming in. It's a really new city that's a very wealthy city because of this trade. And so the city is at this point where it's really being built up. Kind of the idea of maybe some young professionals, the tradesmen that are coming in, sort of a lot of the merchant money. And it's sort of this hub of arts and philosophy, like most of Greece was at this time, and just sort of this modern thought. And I kind of want to, excuse me. So I want to kind of talk about that because I want to compare it to the culture that we find ourselves in now. Because even though maybe our city, Jacksonville, is a little bit older, 200 years, we're not talking about a 2,000-year-old city here. And I feel that there's a sense, and I'm sure all of you can feel it as well, that our city is really kind of coming into its own. There's so much growth happening. There's so much development happening. Really, even since COVID, so much of that, and especially as they're expanding the port, we're this city that are kind of coming into our own. So what does it look like for us? Much like it would have looked like for them, to move forward in love, right, for each other, to receive how it is that God loves us in a way that is not just self-seeking for ourselves. Now, I've said this up here before, but I did not grow up in church. I kind of became a Christian, I'd say, for the first time in high school. But then in my 20s and in college, I really just kind of stepped away from all of that. And I have these very specific kind of memory of being in my mid-20s. And I don't think that I wasn't a Christian. I think I understood, a sense of what happened, of that experience I had in high school. But I remember very clearly thinking that God or the Bible, Jesus, church, it had zero relevancy in my life. Right? I just could not see how any of that had anything to do with what I was going through or what I was doing in my life. And so I just pushed it away. And as I got older and I've come back to God and I've really digged in, I've really looked and been able to see it. What a lie that is, right? We look through the Bible and we look through these ancient texts and they are just showing this pattern over and over again of the history of God's people and really the history of humanity, right? These patterns of God coming in and rescuing his people, whatever pickle we've gotten ourselves in, and we're like, all right, God, thank you for that hand. I did actually need it, but from here on out, I've got it. Thank you very much. And so I want to look at this morning, this moment in history of one of these ancient stories. And it's set in Jerusalem. It's like kind of 1700 something BC. And what's happening at the time is the Assyrian Empire has really raised up as this kind of military power. And they've come down from the north and they've swept through and they've absolutely decimated the northern tribes. It's called the 10 northern tribes of Israel. And they've come and they've put them into exile, right? They've killed them, they've destroyed them, they spread them out. To this day, they're still referred to as the lost tribes, the 10 lost tribes, because they were never able to completely rebuild. And it was the 2 remaining tribes of Judah and Benjamin that really were kind of the remnant and the modern Jewish people came up from. And so we have Jerusalem, and they're really feeling the threat of Assyria. They are at the city gates, chomping at the bit. They have set their sights on what is next, because why settle for 10 tribes when we can get the other ones, right? And so the Israelites, they basically have to come up with a plan. What are we going to do? In the face of this threat, what do we do? And the king at the beginning of kind of this conflict, his name is King Ahaz, sets up this system where the Israelites are going to pay Assyria, their enemy. They're going to line their pockets with money, with a yearly tribute, to keep them from attacking their city. That's kind of, we don't really know what to do. We'll just kind of pay them some money and see if it can keep them. And then when his son Hezekiah comes in, they're still paying this tribute, but he's starting to feel like, ooh, things are getting shifty. Right? I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to hold them off. So what he starts doing is he continues to pay, but he starts collecting and hoarding. He's stockpiling in the cities. He's getting weapons. He's getting grains. He's making sure that because it looks pretty likely that they're coming, when they do come, they're going to have some fresh water. But still, it becomes obvious that this is not enough. The Assyrians are coming. And so they have to think at this point, what else can we do? We need something else. We need backup here. And I like to think of this as a little bit of like the room where it happened moment. I don't know if anybody else in here like was stuck inside for 2 years during a pandemic and became obsessed with Hamilton. Okay? So there's this, if that was you, like it was me, you'll understand this reference. If not, go watch Hamilton. I can't believe you have not already. Anyways, so like the political leaders and the military leaders, they get together and they're like, what are we going to do about this? Okay, and so here's what they come up with, like what nations, what tribe, who else can we get to help get our backs? And I want you to know, we have to look and see what they're not thinking here is we need to go to God, right? Oh my gosh, we need to get on our knees before God, the God who has saved our people time and time again. Like, no, I've got it. Someone in this room, they figured out what they can do. Egypt, right? Egypt, the very symbol historically of oppression for those people, they're going to call on Egypt to come and help them for backup. And I don't know, church, what is worse. Is it that they are going to pay their very real and current enemy, the Assyrians, those oppressors, to keep them from attacking, or if they're then going to turn to their old oppressors, the Egyptians, to come and save them. I'm going to pick up here in Isaiah 30, 1-3. It says, woe to the rebellious children. This is the Lord's declaration. Oh my gosh, my necklace is stuck on here, guys, and now that I know it, I can't even keep reading this to you. Let me take this off, that's super awkward. Okay. Sorry. Somebody tell me these things when I got a necklace hanging by my ear. Okay, I'm going to start again at the beginning. Woe to the rebellious children. This is the Lord's declaration. They carry out a plan, but not mine. They make an alliance, but against my will, piling sin on top of sin. Without asking my advice, they set out to go down to Egypt in order to seek shelter under Pharaoh's protection and take refuge in Egypt's shadow. But Pharaoh's protection will become your shame, and refuge in Egypt's shadow, your humiliation. I wish that I could look at this. I wish I could look at this historical context and I could think, oh my gosh, what fools the Israelites are. What fools they are, time and time again. When will they learn? Because they have been hedging their bets. They're taking their faith and they're putting it not in their God, but they are putting their faith in the enemy who literally wants to kill, steal, and destroy them and their city. They're putting their faith that enemy, if they can give them enough money, is going to leave them alone. Or they're putting their faith in themselves. In their power, we're going to protect ourselves from this. Or they're putting their faith in other people. That those are the people that are going to save them. They're going to protect them from whatever threat is coming. And I want to be very clear. Do we need to be on guard for the attack of the enemy? 100%. Do we need to stand firm in our faith? Absolutely. Do we need to do it in a cloud of witness in our church family? Yes, we do. But let us not fool ourselves. Those are not the things that will save us. Those good things, when we make those things idols, when we look to those things for our salvation, they will fall every time. They cannot hold. Isaiah 43, 1-4 says, Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, and you are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. I can't sit up here and just say, woe to the Israels, without looking at myself and saying, woe to me, what a fool I have been. What a fool I continue to be. Because when the threat is right here, when it's breathing down my neck, you know what I do sometimes? I'm gonna be really honest. I'm gonna pretend it is not there. I am just gonna pretend if I do not acknowledge it, it will go away. Better yet, I'm gonna throw some money at it. Let's see if that takes care of it. And when it comes knocking anyways, what do? I say, okay, you know what? I can take care of this. I can deal with this. I'm gonna take care of it. What do we gotta do? Let's do it. But when I grow weary, when my reserves on my own power, when they fail, I think, okay, yeah, I can't do this by myself. I can't do it. Let's call my friends. Let's get my friends in here. Let's get my enemies in here. I don't know, but we need some people. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. I give Egypt as your ransom, Cush and Sheba in exchange for you, because you are precious in my eyes and honored, and I love you. And I love you. He knows, church, he knows how fickle we are. He knows how we forget what he has done. He knows how easily we scoot over any idol we can get our hands on when things get rough. He knows how we grow weary of him. This is Isaiah 43:22. I don't think I have this one up there. It says, yet you did not call me, O Jacob. You grew weary of me, O Israel. In our weariness, we don't come to him, we grow weary. Now, God had set up, right, really kind of starting in the beginning in the garden and really establishing through Moses the covenant of his law. And it was meant to keep his people close, keep his people under his authority. And at first, right, they were great. They're like, finally, we know what he wants us to do. It's right here. It's written in stone. This is what we've got to do. But they took that blessing and they wore it as a burden. And so God knew that there was going to have to be another way. He was going to have to make another way because time and time again, when we have the choice, right? When the Israelites, when they could choose between the covenant of his law and the covenant of the world, they chose the world. But we must be clear that this new covenant, the covenant of Jesus, which we know on this side is the covenant of blood of Emmanuel, come to, like Jared said, we could just have him come up here because he spoke a lot of my message during communion, right, of that atonement. Here's what I want us not to miss in this series in love, that is a sacrifice, born out of love. It is not a sacrifice that is out of his wrath. It is not a sacrifice out of his disappointment, his annoyance that we've done it again, gone off, tried to do our own thing. Because if it was anything but a sacrifice of love, according to his word, it would be null and void. Because it said that, can we go back to that verse in 1 Corinthians? Just go to the first one that I read. Let's see where it is. Next one. Next one. Let's keep going. Yeah, right. I guess we don't know this verse quite as well as we thought we did. All right. No, I don't think I have it up there. Maybe it's here. Hold on. Let me find it, church. I'm telling you, it's been a week. All right, I'm going to paraphrase it for you. Here's what it says. I don't know, it was probably up there somewhere. If I give everything that I have, if I present my body, yeah, there it is, but do not have love, I am nothing. Did he give everything he had for us? He sure did. Did he give us his body? Yeah, he sure did. But he did it in love. And a love that is not self-seeking, it is not self-seeking, it is sacrificial, because in any other way, it would not be a bond that is unbreakable. You know, I think that if it had otherwise been, God could have just chose to find the new Noah and wash the rest of us away, right? He could have come and really kind of washed away break the people, but what he comes to do in his blood in Jesus, he comes to break all the chains that bind us, whether we take them up ourselves or not, right? His solution isn't, I'm done with you guys again. He's like, you know what? I'm done with the enemy. I'm done with these chains that enslave you, these idols that press you down. So I'm getting away with them. I'm just going to do away with them once and for all. Song of Solomon 8:6, it says, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is as strong as death, jealousy as fierce as the grave. Its flashes are the flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. Many waters cannot quench it, neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. His love for us is fierce. It is as strong as death, stronger, jealous to the point of the grave, to the point of the cross. And it is unstoppable by any force of nature, any allegiance or agreement we make with the world. It is stronger than that. Regardless of what passes in it will, this love remains. If a man offered for love all of the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. Church, and he was. He was utterly despised. He is still despised. And it's because such an act of sacrifice, of sacrificial love, it holds a mirror up to us, right? It forces us to take a look at what we see. And so we have a choice, right? Like the majority of the ancient Israelites who condemned him. Do we go ahead and instead of condemning what we see in the mirror, we condemn that which holds the mirror up to us? Or do we just honestly take a look at what we've got? And we acknowledge how willingly, time and time again, we choose the covenant of the world. We choose our own pride. We choose our own self-righteousness. We choose our money. We choose our status. We choose our people. We choose those over the covenant of his blood and his love that he pours out for us. You know, I think about, back to my ancestors, Lady Catherine. And I think about, in a sense, what a hard choice that would have been for her to leave everything that she had, but in a sense that there's no choice at all, right? What other way is it? You know, as we look at, where we as a church are, and I kind of laid out what it looks like in that church in Corinth and where we are in our church as we're moving forward and where we are in our city. What does it look like for us as a church to choose to come under that authority, to come under that covenant which God has laid for us as we move forward, not on our own power, but together as a people under his? And now I'm going to tell you, so I talked about just where this Assyrian siege was to the city, and they had it right. They weren't going to keep the Assyrians away. They came and they surrounded that city. But what happened at the end there, this Hezekiah, he had some really good parts about this king. That's a whole other thing. We can't go into there too much. But what he did is he went to the temple and he put himself before God and he prayed. He prayed for God. He prayed not just for the nation of Israel, not just for their city, but he prayed for all of the nations of the world. Even then, that God's salvation for them would bless everybody. And at the 11th hour, with the Assyrians absolutely surrounding him and the whole city, here's what happens. It gets a little fuzzy historically, but one night, the Assyrians, they just go. Right? It says maybe there was a plague or kind of a scourge. Actually, one of the historical accounts says that they may have been infected with a plague of mice. Right? They're gone. And I'm going to tell you this is, you think that would be a great lesson for them to kind of stay under God. 100 years later, they just use that to open up for the Babylonians to just come and wipe them away. But this is the choice that we have every single day to make towards each other and towards God. Do we accept this, right? That his love is done in his self-sacrifice in the blood of Jesus, or that it is done in his wrath and it is up to us to make up the difference. And so this morning, I want you guys to stand because I hear this is the invitation that God has for us this morning. So if you guys will stand, we're going to move just into a time of prayer and ministry. And we have time, honestly. I'm trying to keep this short because I think this is about as much as my voice is going to take. But the invitation is this, is to look at ourselves. What are those things that are Assyria, the threat behind it? And it doesn't necessarily look like that. It's all kinds of things. And the things that we go to in the world to fill that space, to agree with that covenant that is only for God's place. And so I just want us to spend a minute to really just kind of open ourselves up and to think about where it is that God has inviting us this morning to believe in the sacrifice of his love. What does that look like for us to receive it? And what in turn does it look like for us to live it out with each other? You know, I feel like this is sort of an obvious thing that we kind of forget, but the truth is that, tomorrow, we could get sued and lose everything that we have, right? We could become sick in a way that breaks our body. And those people who we thought were our friends become our enemies, and then maybe they become our friends again. I don't know. It's all transient. But there is one thing that remains. And I know even saying it, it feels like, how many times have we heard that? Okay, yeah, we know it. This one thing remains. We'll sing it. But I want you to allow space for that to go from here to here. Because it is true. It is the one thing that will remain. We are here a small time church. This since the beginning, right? The Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He who is and was and is to come. That is our invitation this morning to step into that. And so if you're a prayer minister, if you want to come forward, we do this at the end of every service at River City. If you're a visitor or a guest here, is we allow space to respond, just to respond to what God's doing. Anything, whether in the kind of message or communion or worship. that we create space to receive what God has for us, to give to God what we need to give to him. And so if you would like prayer for anything this morning, if you'd like to step into the invitation of God's love, that it is not self-seeking, it is not as for his own gain. And if you've been living in a way where you're expressing a love that has been self-seeking, I encourage you to come forward and put that down this morning.